Welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast, the show that empowers gay men to live their fullest, healthiest lives. Whether you're navigating relationships, mental health, intimacy, finances, career, or personal growth, Ken Howard, a licensed clinical social worker in California, certified psychiatric social worker, and ASEC certified sex therapist, is here to guide you with over 30 years of experience, specializing in gay male individuals, couples, and polycules. As the founder of gaytherapyla.com and gaycoachingla.com. And now, today's episode.
Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I want to talk about White Lotus and gay men's fantasies, the taboo that teases in pop culture. The recent season 3 of The White Lotus, streaming on TV set in Thailand, has stirred buzz lately, not just for its opulent visuals and biting satire and slow-paced but mysterious pacing and ensemble cast, including Parker Posey and her now meme-inducing North Carolina accent, Piper, no, tsunami, Buddhism, that one. But for one particular provocative moment in a recent episode, here we are in late March 2025, where two hot, shirtless young men, clearly brothers in the story, are seen in a steamy and ambiguous interaction. One of those actors is Patrick Schwarzenegger, who plays Saxon, one of the brothers. And his celebrity lineage, is being the son of classic champion bodybuilder and actor and former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he has a rising profile as an actor in his own right. And this adds, I think, even more intrigue to the moment of his kind of high-profile debut as an actor out from under his father's shadow at last. And then playing Saxon's brother, Lachlan, is Sam Nivola, another handsome and promising young actor. Gay Twitter, or really Gay X, I guess we should say, really lit up with this. Reddit threads speculated, memes exploded. Was that scene incest? Are they really going there? And why does this brief, wordless scene ignite so much attention and curiosity and even ambivalence? So, as a gay men's specialist psychotherapist for over 30 years now, and an ASEC certified sex therapist, and someone who has worked with incest survivors in my clinical practice, I kind of want to be clear. This is a discussion about fantasy and pop culture depictions, not a validation of real-world incest. Real-life incest, particularly when non-consensual or involving minors, is a serious crime and a severe form of abuse that causes lasting trauma. But this discussion today is intended more to unpack the complex reactions gay men have to a fictional and fantasy-based depiction in the media and the psychological nuances behind them. Let's talk about how the forbidden equals the fascinating. From a psychological standpoint, one of the consistent truths about fantasy is that the more taboo it is, the more power it tends to hold. Incest, particularly same-sex, consensual-looking adult incest, occupies a special space in the erotic imagination because it triggers so many conflicting associations. Family, love, danger, proximity, forbidden closeness, and of course, playfulness and eroticism. So, for gay men, this takes on an added dimension. Many of us grew up in families where our sexuality was either unspoken or shamed or outright rejected, sometimes traumatically. Our earliest experiences of sexual desire and secrecy were forged often in the same spaces as family identity. Childhood house bedrooms, basements, attics, on vacation, on church trips. It's no surprise then that some gay men later develop fantasies that intertwine masculinity, desire, rebellion, and the taboo in exaggerated or symbolic forms. So in this light, an incest fantasy isn't really about literal sibling attraction. It's about what the sibling represents as an object, as an icon, someone who's close and familiar and intimate, equally male and, ooh, not allowed. So why do incest fantasies resonate with gay men? Let's look at that a little deeper. First one is power inversion. Growing up in a family where someone felt weak or rejected or unseen can create fantasies in a compensatory way of reclaiming power, sometimes by reversing roles or creating imagined scenarios where boundaries are broken on your terms. It's also hyper-closeness and mirroring. A brother may be seen as a genetic twin, the closest possible male mirror. In fantasy, this becomes an erotic symbol of desiring oneself or being desired by oneself. Let's look at rebellion and transgression. Gay men often face a lifetime of rules, spoken and unspoken, about who they're allowed to love or desire or even be. And that's from outside the community and even within the community. These unspoken rules, and sometimes spoken, sometimes rules under great pressure. So incest, not unlike other forms of kink and possibly even just non-monogamy, becomes an imaginative middle finger to heteronormative scripts. It becomes a rebellion that we have to navigate and somehow incorporate in healthier ways, to defy the heteronormative expectation that are put on young gay men and forge our own sense of values outside of heterosexist society. Let's talk about hypermasculinity and doubling. So two athletic, attractive brothers, especially actors like Patrick Schwarzenegger or Sam Nivola, become avatars of the male perfection. The idea of two such men bonding sexually is like watching desire fold in on itself. And importantly, these fantasies usually exist in a safe, non-acted out space. They're mental playgrounds, not blueprints. Let's look at the White Lotus effect, where Taboo meets prestige TV. The White Lotus has made a name for itself as a television program by mixing comedy, class critique, and sexual chaos in exotic locales. Season 3 seems to lean into this even more with implied or explicit elements on everything from spiritual cults to family dysfunction to homoerotic tension. And the incestuous brother scene wasn't just a blink and you'll miss it moment. It was deliberately included to stir discourse. And it worked. In a show famous for its darkly comic scenes and twisted relationships, Jennifer Coolidge, these gays are trying to murder me. These memes just jump out. This moment has really raised the stakes. What does the drug-induced bacchanalia mean? How will the characters ultimately react? Will they explain it or will they leave it open-ended? We haven't finished the season yet of White Lotus, so maybe time will tell in the remaining episodes. But the internet responded with memes and TikToks and endless recaps. One fan joked online, I was already watching for Parky Posey's North Carolina accents, and now I'm invested on a whole new level. The show's creators, such as Mike White, know exactly what they're doing. And they're playing with Taboo not for shock value alone, but for emotional and erotic tension. Let's talk about pop culture's dance with the taboo, from porn to primetime. Incest has long been a trope in gay porn, often coded as stepbrothers or stepfather and stepson or family vacation. What used to be whispered is now front and center in thumbnails and titles and entire studios dedicated to these kinds of fantasies. But what does it mean when mainstream TV, albeit streaming, borrows this script? It means we're living in a time when sexual fantasy is less stigmatized and more performative. Shows like The White Lotus aren't endorsing incest, but they are using it as a narrative bait. It's a visual streaming television program form of clickbait. And gay audiences, well-versed in reading subtext and pushing boundaries, are so here for it, even if they squirm a little. Let's look at repulsion, intrigue, and the fantasy-reality divide. Many of us feel that the emotional cocktail of part of us is turned on and another part says, wait, ew, David, that's too far. And that tension is exactly what makes taboo fantasies so potent, and why good writers and directors and actors know how to use them to keep us watching. And that's always the goal for television ratings or rates of streaming with online streaming services, because it sells advertising or it sells monthly perennial subscribers to streaming services. And in either case, it's about how they make their money, and a lot of it. The technology may change, but the idea of making money by way of having as many viewers as possible does not. As a therapist, I always remind clients that having a fantasy doesn't mean you want to act on it. Fantasy is a world unto itself that's different from what you're actually doing. Sometimes in relationships, sexual fantasies can be brought out into the open and acted on. And there's other times when fantasy does not have a behavior in reality connection to it. Sometimes fantasy starts and ends within the realm of fantasy and doesn't extend into actual real life. It just means that your mind is exploring power and boundaries and identity or connection. Fantasies are kind of like dreams. They're metaphors. And incest fantasies are among the most metaphor-rich. They're not about siblings. They're about proximity and similarity and intensity and emotional inheritance. Some final thoughts. Talking about it doesn't mean approving it. If you're a gay man who watched the White Lotus scene, 5 times over and still felt confused or intrigued or aroused or disturbed, well, welcome to being human. You're not broken, you're processing something deep, and your reaction is part of your emotional and erotic intelligence. In therapy, we create space to explore these responses without judgment. We separate fantasy from desire, desire from behavior, and behavior from identity. And we honor the fact that erotic life is nuanced, and it can't be dumbed down or oversimplified just because it's convenient and everybody's in a hurry these days. Sometimes things are layered or nuanced and need careful discussion that can't be dismissively reduced. We have way too much of that lately, especially in politics, with this right, left, all or nothing, all villain or all hero mentality. Part of the dumbing down of America in recent years has been this cultivation of the intolerance of nuance, and we're the worse for it. For many topics, including aspects of sexuality like this, it's time to bring back the nuance and intelligent analysis that these topics deserve. So, yes, it's okay to talk about gay incest fantasies, even the one sparked by a trendy drama featuring Patrick Schwarzenegger in a tropical setting. In fact, talking about them might be the healthiest thing you can do. Because when we unshame the fantasy, we stop fearing our minds. And we begin to understand what we truly want, what we need, and why. We clarify all aspects of our sexuality, and we reconcile our basic instincts with the 6 principles of sexual health from Doug Braun Harvey and Michael Vigorito that I have applied to gay men specifically in some of my previous work, in previous episodes of the podcast. And when we do this, we lead more fulfilling lives. It's our quality of life by way of the quality of our sex life. If you need to talk about these or other topics, I provide psychotherapy and sex therapy services to residents of the state of California, and life, career, relationship, or executive coaching services to anyone, even in other states of the United States or countries across the world. So if you need to, let's talk. You can text me 310-339-5778 or call 310-339-5778 or email ken@gaytherapyla.com, the therapy website, or ken@gaycoachingla.com, the coaching website, for more information on a free 15-minute consultation or just to make your first session appointment. Thanks. I'll see you next time.